Mr. Raffensperger, Secretary Raffensperger, thank you for taking the time to speak to me about the 2020 election, the results we went through, the process that you've had. I know you're an engineer, so you're probably like me. You're very process oriented. I come out of the technology space, 30 years, small company I ran, CEO of a company, technology, mostly SAP, Oracle, PeopleSoft, those kind of things. So, I'm a little curious, on the things that you've seen in the last 3 to 4 months, from where the audit is that I think the Governor Kemp sent you a letter back in November 17th about the RLA that Joe Rossi wrote, and do you see any veracity to that document, or are you and your staff looking at that document, or you think it's just more hyperbole from another guy that just wrote some documentation to give to the governor?
Well, we opened up an investigation. There's 2 investigators that are working on it right now, looking at all the information. But I'm not here to defend Fulton County. In fact, I'm the first one to hold them accountable.
Sure.
This has been going on in Fulton County since 1993. I'm the first one to get them under consent agreement.
Good.
And because of that, we ended up having a monitor there, Carter Jones, who wrote a 350-page report. And I don't know if you've read that, but
yes, I've read a lot of reports.
And you go through that. What really that allowed us to do is then have enough substance, not just allegations, but really to use that to strengthen through the Election Integrity Act of 2021, that for the very first time, you can actually replace an election board. If you look at what happened in Florida, you always heard about Palm Beach County and Broward. Sure. Governor Scott replaced one, Governor DeSantis replaced the other. Our process is a little more extensive than that. There's a review panel right now that's going through that. One Republican election board member, 1 Democrat, and our general counsel, Ryan Germany, but they'll report back to the state election board. Are they making the progress, or are they not making the progress? And if they are making progress, is it enough progress? Those type of questions. But as it relates to the information that Mr. Rossi sent in, that's all being reviewed and going through that. And they'll be updating the House member and the relevant state senator also where they are, with that, since they're in session right now.
Okay, so going back to, I'm going back to, I want to go some questions as I asked Mr. Sterling around the RFP process, but mostly a lot of issues around Fulton County and some of the things, that I've, as Joe Blow, the average Joe Blow voter, has questions on. Okay. I don't have any conspiracy things behind me. I don't care about family members that are your family, not your family, brothers, sisters. I got 6 of them. I know who my brothers and sisters are. There's no made-up ones that I know of. So
what did you think of that?
I thought it's over the top. I thought it was over the top. But I think a lot of things are over the top. As I mentioned to the guy earlier,
So you don't think it's appropriate for people to say I have a brother named Ron who works for the Chinese?
No, I think that's absolutely horrible. Because it's not driven by facts.
Exactly.
I'm like you from an engineering standpoint, right? If then else, and we learned in COBOL, right? If this happens and this happens, or else this happens, right? But it happens on both sides. That's how I got into this with talking to the guys in Living Alive. All I hear, which quite honestly, as you know, that sells right. On TV. Senator Harrell over here throws out all kinds of descriptive things, and then there's the race card, and then we over here on this side of the house have to say, well, this. And I think, quite frankly, the American public is tired of it. I can tell you the Georgia public, and I know you are. I know you're frustrated, but I think what I'm here, from my standpoint, is to say, I'm just an average Joe Blow. Okay. I'm an old infantry officer. I'm an Army Ranger. So I shoot bullets that hit a target, hopefully, that kill the enemy, right? Hanging chads and all the other things to me is hyperbole. And I think it's designed to be hyperbole. I used to watch Hannity and Combs years ago. I don't watch them anymore, have not in a while. But I really believe that Hannity and Combs, when they got done, they high-fived each other and went out and had beers. That's what I believe.
I don't know what they did afterwards. But
that's just my belief. I'm not saying it happened.
Well, to your point, since you brought up the hanging chads, I think that's, at least in my consciousness and yours, it's just seared in the brain. We don't want to have elections like that.
Correct.
So when we were updating the voting machines, we did a deep dive. What does that look like? We knew that we had to replace the DREs. That was really 2003 technology, maybe 2002 technology, put into place about 2005, but it never had a paper trail. So we knew we wanted a paper trail, and then the real question, do you want hand-marked paper ballots or you want a ballot marking device? But at the end of the day, we knew we needed to update the machines. And so we began that process as soon as I took office. We got HB 316 passed, and that's when we began the implementation. We didn't want to have an election where people could say and disparage the results. I said in January 2020, before COVID, but when the machines were almost all in place, the new machines, I said, I understand in these polarized times, half the people would be happy, half the people would be sad. But we wanted 100% of the people to have confidence. And then we looked at what we had in 2020. It was all about voter fraud. In 2018, Stacey Abrams, it was all about voter suppression. But here's what happened at the end of the day. You want to just boil it all back, pull it back to the cob. 28,000 Georgians skipped the presidential ballot, yet they voted down ballot. In Metro Atlanta and Athens, Senator David Perdue got 20,000 more votes than President Trump. And the Republican congressman got 33,000 more votes than President Trump. That's what happened.
Okay. And that's fair. I mean, that's fair because that's data.
That's data.
That's data that's supported, and it's not hyperbole. It's not.
No, it's right on our
feeling.
website.
That's
Just
what I'm saying.
add up the numbers and then take a look at it.
That's what I'm saying.
There.
But that's not what Joe Blow sees on the TV.
Well,
That's not what sells on TV advertising.
Right.
Apparently, I'm not saying these guys 11 Alive do it, but historically speaking, I come from New Jersey, which is one of the most corrupt states, I believe, in the nation. My father was a
looks like
assemblyman.
we have agreement going already.
My father was an assemblyman. I had 3 to 4 governors at our house over a good 10-year period. I'm not sure if you're familiar with a guy named George Norcross. He's called the Kingmaker of New Jersey. He's an old friend of mine. We were legislative aides together. I worked for the Speaker of the House. I was actually dating his daughter. A long story. But back to the 2020 election. Do you believe, prior to the 2020 election, and I'm looking from a project management standpoint, do you believe that the ES&S system was broken? When I was asking Nancy this question, she says, well, Mark, that's interesting because most of the people liked it. Most of the people liked the ES&S system.
Right.
So if we can take out, curling v. Kemp or whatever other issues that are going around that, if you would have had to do it over again, I'm not asking you to second guess your choice for Dominion. You believe it's a very good system, solid system, squared away, no deficiencies. If you had to do it over again, where you didn't have to go through this issue with changing out ES&S, do you think the results would have been any different? Yeah, I talked to Nancy, and she said that, from her experience in talking to the voters and talking to the people that she's interfaced with over the years, that people like the system. They liked the ES&S system, and they thought that it was squared away, had no problems with Associated, and now all of a sudden we moved to a new system. We moved to a new system that, quite frankly, has never been used, right? It was a brand new system. At that point, and again, going back to the political side, one of the people on the Democrat side, the senator, said, what are we going to use these vendors who are bloodthirsty for a new system? Well, I guess that senator must be pretty happy. I haven't heard from her lately about what she thought was bloodthirsty or not. So into the ES&S system, do you think the same things would have happened if you would have stayed with ES&S over Dominion?
Well, the advantage of having a paper ballot is that you could do 100% hand recounts, you could do risk limiting audits. But the old machines, the DRE machines, were accurate. We had not had issues with that. But rolling into 2020, having a paper ballot proved out to be a benefit.
Okay, awesome. I don't know if this is just what I've heard from some of the critics. So you said that, the critics have claimed that prior to the purchase of the old ES&S system in 2002, it was not verifiable, auditable, transparent, or truly recount capable. Are they right or are they wrong?
Well, to do a risk limiting audit, you're looking at having a paper ballot because when you have an electronic machine, in effect what you do is press the button and you get virtually the same answer. So that's why when you have a verifiable paper ballot, and what you're seeing nationwide, everyone is going to a paper ballot, either hand marked or a ballot marking device, so that you can do a risk limiting audit, pull out 90%, 95%, whatever number that is to do your risk limit, or you can do a 100% hand recount. And that's what we did in the 2020 race. We pulled out all 5 million ballots and hand recounted them, stacks for President Trump.
I was there.
Vice President Biden and Joe Jorgensen.
I was
and
there.
so you looked at that, and in Cherokee County, there's probably a bigger stack for President Trump.
There was.
And then you go to other counties, that would have been the flip. But you
Absolutely.
added them all up statewide, 5 million pieces of paper. So you could verify two things. This is what the count was, and the machines were accurate. They didn't flip the votes, and these are the results. And President Trump came up short.
Correct. So you mentioned Cherokee County. I was a poll analyst there, afterwards. So there's 40 of us in the room, and I happened to be sitting next to a guy who was just a Joe Blow like me, another technology guy.
Mm-hmm.
As we're sitting there going through our training, which lasted about 14 seconds, to do with the ballot, how to do this, how to do that, I see a box, one of the boxes, and there's a box that's locked, okay, and there's a box that's on its side, and the bottom of the box is perforated. I looked over to the election guy. I said, "Can I ask you a question?" He says, "Yeah." I said, "Can't that box be opened up?" I mean, the box I'm looking at right there is perforated on the side. So there's no bottom tape on it. There's no lock on the bottom. Well, I guess if someone wanted to do that, they could do it. I'm like, well, okay, well, that's a government answer. That's not the answer I'm asking you. I'm asking, why did you lock the top part of it, but not the bottom? It's like locking the front door, but the back door is open. Couldn't give me an answer. So I just thought that was strange to me. Not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just saying, you would have thought if they're saying it's secured, I don't know how many boxes were like that. I don't know if it was just that one. But that was just my thought of why isn't the bottom and top both secured of the boxes.
Well, that's the first time I'm hearing it, so let us look into it, and we'll circle back.
Yeah, okay. I think I even wrote about, I think I put something on Facebook about it at one point in time. I did tell the election director up there and told her that same thing. I said, hey, just FYI for you.
Well, we had a 1-800 number, and we tried to get it out there as much as we could. See something, say something.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
So,
yeah.
But our operators were quite busy with getting.
No, again, I don't dispute any of that stuff. Here's a question for you around your RFP. Now, you were involved as an overseer of the RFP at all? Did you have any input into the RFP? What went on? Who became the ultimate project manager? Why? And all those kind of things?
Well, oversight, yes, but the actual review committee was a group of people, and I did not sit on that.
Okay.
I didn't want to have any
so.
hint of, I was trying to push this one way or the other. So we had someone from the disability community, we had someone from the IT community,
Mm-hmm.
my deputy was on there. So we wanted to make sure we had broad perspectives. Then we valued all of the criteria based on price, and then qualitative and quantitative.
Okay.
So on the price points, Dominion was much lower. On the qualitative, ES&S scored a little bit higher. But when you average it all up, and the qualitative was actually 75%, but Dominion's price was so much lower that they were a low qualified bidder.
Okay. You're familiar with doing contracts, I'm sure, as you have your own company, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you think it's, I've never seen this in my 30 years as a project manager and implementation guy, doing large ERP projects. I mean, multi-year, multifaceted projects, statewide projects as well. I've never seen a front-loaded contract. So the contract was $107 million. And I asked Mr. Sterling the same question, but they front-loaded $89 million of that in the first 2 years. I don't think that's a good value for the citizens of Georgia, that a company the size of Dominion, which I've heard is anywhere between $25 and $30 million as a company, can front load $89 million of the contract in the first 2 years. I don't think that's, my personal opinion, I don't think that's a good service to the taxpayers of Georgia.
Well, that was all, it was a process that everyone was treated the same, didn't matter what company it was. And so they're all qualified based on their financial standing, looking at their balance sheets and financial capability. But also we took all the delivery of all the product. What now is, what you're looking at is we have in that contract for any kind of IT upgrades over a period of time, any kind of improvements that they have to the system, we get to participate in that without additional cost. And then any kind of also like the maintenance contract. And so really we bought all the equipment. And so usually you pay for what you get.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Let me just bring this, I think I showed this to Mr. Sterling. Maybe you can, sorry about that. I had it here somewhere now, I probably can't find it. It was the actual contract from the state that I had with,
Well,
here
we
you
used the Department of Administrative Services, DOAS. So,
go. Right here where I highlighted, just I have the arrows pointing. I bet Gabe $1, and I'll bet you $1. I think the project, again, from my standpoint, just overruns everything else. I believe the contract's going to be well in excess of $107 million over 10 years. That's just me. So, you know, I asked Gabe if he'd take the $1 bet. He said, sure. So I guess you would take the same bet with me if I said, I think the state taxpayers are going to pay more on the back end. And I only did my analysis based on licensing agreements, maintenance, any kind of upgrades. I see that there's options in there, as you can see, for the counties, right? Because they pay
yeah, in the county,
for those counties, and they all know. I guess my question would be, thank you.
Yeah.
I guess my question would be, do all those counties know that if they choose this, and the taxpayers of those counties know they choose this, that's what they're going to be on the hook for if they decide to do it?
That's a county decision, right?
Well, okay.
Yeah, we're using state dollars. We had a $150 million bond. And
Yeah.
so we're authorized for up to $150 million.
Oh, okay, good. You just made me help me out with a question here on the bond. How much will a state pay in interest on the 20-year bond? Do you know?
I don't know what the interest rate is.
Okay.
It'd be in the government, look at their annual.
Okay. Did the state take, so the question I have is, from a technology standpoint, why did the state take out a 20-year bond for a system that has a 10-year life cycle?
That's you'd have to talk to the state finance department, but that's generally that they use a long bond issue because we have a very good bond rating.
Okay.
That's really a DOAS issue.
Okay. Yeah, I think DOAS has, to me, some issues. I mean, I would ask, the CIO, the new CIO, is it Shanzia Thomas? Is her name? I don't know if I pronounced her first name. But I think that she's got some work to do on the procurement side of the house. My personal opinion. I mean, the hard interactive thing of it, not being able to load up and get their procurement done, whether it was 2 minutes ahead of time, whether it was 10 minutes ahead of time, they didn't get the same. And I'm not a vendor person, so I'm just saying if the process is all the same, if they didn't get their stuff in time, I just think that from a procurement standpoint, that looks just a little antiquated to me, that they don't have a good process done. It's an old process, I guess, or an old tabulation software, or however to bring it in. So what I'm trying to get to is, in a project, as you know, as an engineer, we have processes we go through from start to beginning. Okay, so now I want to go talk to Fulton County. Fulton County has been a problem child reviewer since 1993, I think.
Well, it's not been mine. But
mine too. And I will tell you that Rob Pitts
been the
sat on a
people of
board of
Georgia.
mine many years ago.
Yeah,
Okay.
The people of Fulton County have suffered with this since at least 1993.
Yes.
Perhaps longer.
Yes, and this is where my question is that still bogs me. Still, it really bothers me as a project manager. You did a pilot, okay, 6 counties. We've known since 1993, or before that, probably when Jesus was running, that Fulton's been a problem. And I'm still baffled why no one said we need to bring Fulton into the pilot program. Does anybody have an answer for that? Because Gabe gave me an answer. I didn't really think it was a good one, but why would you not bring Fulton County into that pilot program? Like I used to call them good, bad, and the ugly, is the Clint Eastwood model. You got good counties, bad counties, and ugly counties. Just like you have users.
Right.
In any contract. Is there a reason why they didn't come to the project early on, or you didn't include them, or was that done by somebody in DOAS?
No, it was our agency decision, but also related to how much equipment we had to get it up and running. But we wanted to make sure it was really spread out through the entire state, because we really were going to leverage those people as really regional training centers.
Okay, so you're okay with Fulton County having been a problem and still a problem that might be a problem in 2022, and maybe you're getting ahead of it now with the new SB 202, I mean,
Yeah,
Senate Bill
SB 202.
that's probably
And the
taking
review
care of
panel-
some of those problems?
The review panel, well, they've gotten the message. They now know that little Johnny's homework is being checked. And all of a sudden, they're standing up to be accounted. They don't want to be like Palm Beach County and Broward County.
Right.
Governor Scott took care of one, and Governor DeSantis took care of the other.
But they know it's a problem. I mean,
Well, yes, and they've even stated that.
yeah, and my understanding is Rick Barron, who resigned, said, I'm out of here. He's come back, and he's going to be here on a short-term contract or whatever till April or May or something like that. I don't know if there's a national search going on like they said they were going to 6 months ago or not. But, I mean, if a guy says, I'm out of here and resigned, why would we allow that guy to come back into a role that he says I'm resigning from? That's just my question to you as an executive of this company, of the state.
We have no authority over that. That's the state election board, and they have the review panel. So you'd have to talk to the state election board members.
Yeah. Not really me. I'm just saying, again, Joe Blow, looking at why things happen in the state to try to not to get into feelings.
Well, counties run the elections,
Right.
so they have broad authority.
Thank
on
you.
that. And because they run the elections, you just can't come in and say you're fired. And that's why with SB 202, it requires a review panel to do a thoughtful due process review. And it's actually a bipartisan review. A Republican election board member from Catoosa County, a Democrat election board member from Gwinnett County, who happens to be an engineer. And so we're going to go through a deep dive, methodical process, along with our general counsel, who then provides the legal framework for that review, and they report back to the state election board. You know, is the progress being made? What does that look like? And you know, what are we looking at? And the time frame, things like that. It's a deep dive, and they'll get back to the state election board while the General Assembly's here in session.
Sure. You mentioned the deep dive, which I can certainly appreciate. I saw in one of your press releases that you're going after 35 cases of election fraud or whatever it has been going back to 2016. Is that right? 35 cases that haven't been that you've
We've
made some recommendations.
We've cleaned up all the backlog, and we had pretty much a clean deck coming into 2020 cycle.
So all those people that you have said we're going to go after from election fraud. I mean, they had to be adjudicated.
We still have open cases for 2020. And so our investigators are looking at that, and then as additional information it becomes available, then we open up an investigation. But we've already brought many cases before the state election board, and they're working on closing up all those and getting that as cleaned up because we have the 2022 cycle coming.
Okay, and I hope you can appreciate my question is going to be okay, so we had these problems that started in 2016 that are just now being adjudicated, I guess, or finalized.
They were done before they were done in 2019, 2020, before the 2020 cycle.
Okay, so it took, I guess, 3 years or something like that.
Yeah.
We had to go through the process.
We had a big backlog when I took office.
Yeah, okay. So you think you're going to have any problems like that going in 2024 if you're still here as the Secretary of State? Do you think anything comes out from 2020?
It really depends on what kind of, what you really have as questions. I do think that SB 202, we shored that up with photo ID for absentee voting. I ran on that. I said we need to have photo ID for all forms of voting. We finally have it. And so I think that's going to help, add confidence in the system, but also you actually have to, mail in a copy of your driver's license with your request for an absentee ballot. I think that'll shore up confidence, but also making sure you know who those voters are. And I think that should help on some of the questions that we've had and allegations that we've had.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about, you've got a new, no, I'm not gonna, I want to ask that one question. I want to ask that question. I'll go back to this, to Fulton County. I asked Mr. Sterling this question, and maybe you can help me out as well. Gabe says that he seems to believe that he was put into this role as a project manager, just at the last minute, oh my God, we don't have anybody going on there. And I guess, Ms. Fuchs, is that her name, Jody? Fuchs?
George. Fuchs,
okay.
my deputy.
Fuchs, yes, your deputy. She pretty much said, hey man, you go get that job. I think that was a mistake, personally, as a project manager, that you bring a person in who doesn't have a software background, a hardware background, an implementation background, to lead a brand new $107 million, never tried before operation. I think it's, if you're going to do something like that again, personal opinion, I don't think it needs to be someone from your side of the house that makes a decision on who the project manager should be. I think that should be something that's sent out to people in industry, whether you go to Project Management Institute. PMI has local chapters all through the United States, one in Atlanta.
Well, I think the challenge that you have on that, you're making two assumptions. One is that there will be companies that actually want to do the work. And when I took this office, we had 9 lawsuits. I inherited a few, and we got additional ones from Stacey Abrams and all these liberal activists. We got eventually that up to 15 lawsuits. We beat them all back one at a time. But people saw the litigation issue, and then you started looking at the cost issue, that people were talking about $500,000, $1 million for implementation, a $100 million program, things like that. So the cost was just, very, very high. And then a lot of people, then when we started looking at, we talked to our legal department, we started getting this feedback that they didn't want to touch it. And so that's the challenge that people saw. And it was what it was, and that's why we made the decision to, move Gabriel Sterling out of our office and have him, do that full time, because we knew it required full-time control. And we got the system set up in time for the presidential primary, and then it got pushed out, obviously, because of COVID.
Sure.
Had 2 weeks of it, but
Sure.
we were ready to go.
Okay. I mean, thank you for that offer. I mean, I'll just go back to, Chris Harvey, I think, the Safe Commission had a meeting way back in 2017 or 18 when you started going through this process. I would have hoped that someone said, hey, let's go to the Georgia Technology Authority, let's go to someone here and let's put out a bid. Because you know what? It does get political.
But none of that was put out before I got here.
I know. I mean, but if Harvey was making a recommendation of going forward, right? And I'm not blaming you. I'm just asking a question.
But we couldn't do anything until House Bill 316 was passed, which actually authorized the process. And then we had to put out the RFP for the machine. So we really were, at a point where until that bill was signed into law, which was probably about March 15th, something like that. That's really
about 3 months before the primary came up, right?
This is in 2019.
2019.
Yeah. So this is kind of like when the firing, pistol went off. Okay, now, we got to get this ready for the presidential primary. You got to put out an RFP. You had to begin the whole process.
Okay, and you believe that was a process issue that was not because I think Mr. Sterling said, "Gee, my God, we didn't know there was an RFP coming out." He goes, "Okay, so you believe that was a problem before?"
Well, the challenge that we really had is that in the 2018 General Assembly, there were several election equipment bills, and people were having discussions: should it be this system? Should it be that system? And at the end of the day, what happened, nothing passed, and there were conversations. So you actually had Representative Scott Turner had a bill, then Representative Ed Setzler's worked on something, and Senator Bruce Thompson worked on, you had these bills, but they didn't get through the General Assembly, and that's when Secretary of State Brian Kemp, formed the Safe Commission to say, okay, coming back, we need to answer all these questions, and that's when they did a very thorough review, and that's where coming in to the 2019, when I took office, the bill was dropped. We wrote all the language, got it approved, got it signed, and that's when we could begin the process of procurement and looking at implementation and getting it ready for the presidential primary.
Okay, I would venture to say that, and one of the things I would like to see moving forward, if I could give you a recommendation, you may not pick it, but I asked why there wasn't a PMO done, why it wasn't a project management office here done. As you know, a PMO serves a lot of great applications, in this large scale. Everybody could have seen it. Everybody be online, seeing where they are, seeing where Fulton County is compared to DeKalb County and things like that. Right. And I think the absence of a PMO is a concern to me. I'm surprised that the Dominion project manager didn't say, hey, best practices, because they talk about best practices through their documentation. A best practices in a large scale, $107 million operation would have been a PMO. So you could have seen what was going on every day. Anybody else that worked in your organization, all the different state directors, all the county people could have seen what they had. And I just think that was a missed opportunity. My personal opinion. Okay?
Well, if past this prologue, we're probably going to keep this equipment for another 10 years, just like we did with the old DREs. They went in 2002 and they lasted until 2018. So they had 16-year runs. So it may not be that long just because technology does advance so much.
Yep.
But we'll get that ready for the 2030 cycle.
this is a 2020 question, but it's probably a 2022 question, but it's definitely tied to 2020. Okay. So I know that you're looking at a voter registration system that you put on your press release not too long ago between Salesforce.com and MTX Group and so many other things. Is that a bid that was set up by DOAS?
Yeah, they're a state-approved contractor, and so we, are using them for that.
Okay, I didn't see, and I could be wrong, I didn't see on MTX's website that they have any experience in voter registration systems.
Well, we're using the Salesforce background, or the backbone of Salesforce.
Yep. Okay.
And so we've been working with them on that, and
So it was a bid. You sent out a bid to the old company EcoNet or whatever it's called, or VoterNet or whatever it was.
We've replacing the technology.
Okay. And would you have any concern that you're buying a system that puts critical voter registration, into the cloud, outside of the control of the state, where it can be breached? Do you have any
we have
issues
full
around
control
that?
over that. People have expressed some concerns about Salesforce, I believe, because some of their activities with other groups. But this will be our property, our information, and we'll make sure we have we're using FedRAMP, which is same as what Department of Defense uses. So we're making sure we have robust cybersecurity. We understand when we meet as Secretary of State, probably 25 to 35% of our discussions are about cybersecurity. We understand that hackers don't sleep, and so we have to always be on our guard. They're out there. It could be domestic, it could be foreign, it could be who knows. Guy living in his mom's basement.
The Russians, right? The Russians were the ones who caused the problem.
We don't care who it is. We care about it all. So we're
I'm being facetious, of course.
Yeah, I know, but we're on guard for all that.
Yes, you have to be.
There's a lot of sharp people out there.
You have to be.
Mischievous people.
I mean, look at Elon Musk. He's got a guy that was going to he wanted to give the guy $50,000 to shut up and not hack into his system. He goes, no, man, I'm gonna keep on doing it. So a young guy. This may be a question that you may not know. To me, and you're a CEO of a consulting company, will we agree references are king? I mean, when you're looking at a new implementation and you're trying to bid on a contract and there's 2 or 3 other people there, how important do you think references were, and do you know who they were, what references were checked before Dominion was selected?
Yes, we know that they're the second largest vendor of election equipment across the country. They supply multiple types of systems. In other words, they supply hand-marked paper ballots and they supply ballot marking devices. And they supply that, I believe all of Colorado uses the Dominion system. Typically, states don't have a statewide system, so it's county by county. So half the state could be ES&S, then you have Dominion be the other half, and then there's also Hart Intercivic, and then there's other systems.
Clear ballots or whatever else is.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, so you have to look at, and there's interfaces that have to be built to make sure they're all hopefully talking to each other at some point in time, like the stovepipe decision we had back in the 21st century Governor Barn days, where there's 4 different disparate systems that supposedly talk to each other, but we know in some of the handoffs was.
Well, I think the advantage of Georgia having one system makes it better for our office, but also from the standpoint of training and really updating the counties. I think it's more seamless. And that's something that happened with the old DRE machines that was put into place in 2002.
Thank you, do you believe, I don't know if you're aware of this, I believe that some of the vendors are too tightly aligned with EAC, but that's just my opinion, on some data.
You're talking about the Election Assistance Commission?
I don't think there's enough oversight. I think there's not enough vendors that get tested all the time, whether they're Pro VV or SL1 or Dominion or whomever.
House Bill 316 required us to have all systems, any system that we used, be certified and gone through the certification process of the Election Assistance Commission. So United States EAC. So Dominion's one of those, ES&S, Hart, there's companies that have been certified. It is a rigorous process. It takes several years to really work through that.
Would you be surprised if I said that Pro V&V has about 80% of the revenue coming from Dominion? Would that surprise you at all? when they're testing and stuff like that?
Well, I know that in my business, we tend to do a lot of business with certain contractors, and
Right.
everyone's got their friends, and they know it's a trusted source. So that does happen.
Okay.
It's typically they check your price, but you also have to. It's the right price, but they also want to make sure you have good references.
Right. Exactly.
It's a competitive marketplace out there.
Yeah. And speaking of references, do you know a guy named Brandon Hurley at all from the state of Texas? Does that name ring a bell?
Faintly.
Okay, I've done some documentation on him, and he goes back to 2013 in the state of Texas. He's a state of Texas elections supervisor, but he's a technology guy like you and I, our backgrounds. And he hasn't, the only systems he hasn't certified since 2013 up until recently was Dominion. Would that surprise you if I said, I have a document here I can give you, but it's not going to do me any good. I mean, he has not certified Dominion since 2013, and then I think just until recently, he went and certified Dominion's 5.5A, but it had to be a lot of back and forth with the people from Dominion having to come in. This guy wasn't available. This guy wasn't here. We came for the we came to the project site meeting. They didn't have their act together. We had to go back. More stuff. Does any of that concern you at all from a guy who's been doing this for a long time, saying, hey, did our procurement people say, what, let's go look at some of these, because that's how I found it. Like our vice president says, just go and Google it. I mean, so. Yeah.
Well, we've gotten, good service from Dominion. I know state of Colorado has, other states have, and so.
You're happy with it.
From the standpoint
awesome.
of responsiveness, that's what we're looking for, is someone that will be just like we had, with ES&S, because the old DRE really wasn't an ES&S machine. It actually started out as a Diebold. They went through splitting up their technology, bankruptcy and all that, so ES&S, got that. But we were pleased with the service we got from, both those vendors. There's other, really good vendors out there. And so I think that gets back to customer service, reliability, security, things like that.
Okay. On the in the customer service, we're the customers, right? I mean, you would hate to imagine that we're not the customers.
No, that's why we put in SB 202 that lines have to be shorter than an hour.
Yes,
that's awesome. It won't be quite as good as Chick-fil-A.
Awesome. I would have loved to have the beers put in there. You can so you can. If someone's going to give me a Michelob Ultra, I might vote for them.
Yeah, well, outside 150 feet, I guess I can't stop you from doing that. If you want to have an adult beverage.
No, that's awesome. The history, I think, of some of the things that I've seen just with the implementation was a little bit bothersome to me, but you've stood by and said, this is the decision we made, this is the process we did, these are the people we interacted with, these are the things we've done. So out of all that, if we didn't move forward with SB 202 and put some real things in place, how much difficult do you think the election of 2022 would be, and moving forward 2024 if you didn't help,
well,
with some of those documents?
SB 202 wasn't about Dominion. What it really
I realize that.
It's about, number one, making sure we have photo ID. Mm-hmm. Number two, the counties did a really good job in the fall election of keeping lines short. I screenshot when the average wait time got down to as low as 2 minutes in the afternoon. In the morning, there's a few precincts that were a little rough, and so they weren't closed at 7. They had to stay that extra 45 minutes or whatever. But the average wait time was 2 minutes. The longest on the leaderboard I saw was about 50 minutes. So they had made great progress, but now they have accountability. They got to keep the line shorter. Now we can actually look through the state election board. We can hold with the review panels counties that can't get their act together, i.e. Fulton County. That's a good thing. But also we've done two other things that I think they're really good. Third-party groups cannot flood voters with these absentee ballot requests. If you, the voter, want an absentee ballot, then you go ahead and you request it. I think that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
And that way, because what would happen is here you are, an election director, all of a sudden you're getting 5 applications from the voter. This is one from this person, different third-party groups flooding the zone, and they couldn't keep up with it. So we stopped that. And we also said, third-party groups, if you want to really help defray the cost of elections, guess what? You send it to the Secretary of State's office, and we'll send it back out to the counties on a per capita basis. So every county will get a portion of those dollars. It doesn't all go just to the big counties that have these grant writers that are very good at writing grants. Small counties, Tolliver County's got 2,500 people. They don't have a grant writer on staff.
Right.
But I bet you their budget is probably more pushed in a county that has 1 million people. Just saying.
And you make a great, and this is my last question because I know you're extremely busy, and you believe that everything that has been done outside of all the hyperbole that goes on both sides, do you believe that you have an honest and fair election that came out of the 2020? Regardless of, I saw your documentation you wrote to Congressman Loudermilk and the rest of the people there. I mean,
yeah, we said in that letter, I said there's never a perfect election.
Never a perfect election.
But every allegation that was made, we opened up an investigation. People alleged 10,315 dead people. We found 4. My letter said 2, we found 2 more. But that we run it down. They said 66,000 underage voters. There were 0. But you can register to vote when you're 17 and a half. We check to make sure they're 18 by election day, things like that. So yes, at the end of the day, and the reason that President Trump came up short, I think probably number 1 is that 28,000 people skipped the presidential ballot, and yet they voted down ballot. And you look at what happened with the Republican congressmen. They got 33,000 more votes than President Trump. And I think that's the story of what happened in Georgia.
Last question would be, since you're tied, I mean, since you know the people in Dominion, right? You interface, it probably do have executive face-off strategies at some point in time, whether they're Polis or somebody, right? And there's down people.
I know who they are.
Them, right? So I think when in the reading that I did, that Fulton got a $450,000, or Fulton paid Dominion itself $450,000 for workers, not poll workers, but technicians, warehouse people, and things like that. Did you find that at all a little odd that Fulton contracted with Dominion for $450,000, knowing that it's not your money, it's Fulton's money, number 1,
right.
And then the Southern Poverty Law Center contracted or got a grant. They weren't even a vendor for the county. Got a grant for $154,000. Before they could issue the grant, they came back and said, oh my gosh, we forgot we're not a vendor yet of Fulton County. They had to go get registered as a vendor, and then they dispersed the funds. Do you just think that's part of just who Fulton County is and how they do things? And I know you don't have any oversight to that, but I would ask the people at Dominion, we have Georgia, we have companies that do temporary staffing that could probably have done that and probably shave some money off as opposed to $450,000. I don't know who paid
I'm a
that
Fulton
money.
County taxpayer, and I pay property taxes, and that's why when I was in the General Assembly, I wanted to reconstitute Milton County.
You're right.
And also wanted to pass 2 homestead exemptions to elevate our, our reduction in property taxes. Passed it on the House, and then died in the state Senate. So you might want to talk to the state senators that didn't let that go forward. But all that said, is I don't have a problem bringing in professionals, Dominion election experts to help them out to manage through their situations, because at the end of the day, we have an election to run, they have an election to run.
Sure.
The other issue, yes, I've raised my eyebrows because we've been pushing back on these so-called nonpartisan activist groups. They're not nonpartisan.
No, they are partisan.
They're all on the left side of the aisle, and they've cost the taxpayers of Georgia millions of dollars, and that's why I've been fighting them since day 1. Stacey Abrams was in Virginia in the middle of October, and she said, just because you win doesn't mean you've won. She still hasn't conceded, and now she's back for more.
Right.
She's trouble, and people need to figure that out.
And that's what I would ask you. I would ask you to make sure that as out there as you can be, someone from the state has got to say, we have to change our dynamics. We have to change our dynamics with elections, because if we don't,
third-party groups cannot now help counties, and we'll be watching any type of activity, what that looks like. But also, I think I've shown, because I had to make some tough choices. They were the right choices because I followed the law and I followed the Constitution, that I'll fight to have honest and fair elections in Georgia. And at the end of the day, the campaigns have to win. They got to make sure that people are out there. And so we have to, as a Republican, we need to make sure we turn out our team, because the Democrats are going to turn out theirs. But my job, when I sit in this chair, is to make sure we have a fair and honest count.
And I believe
make sure that we run it down the line.
I believe you've answered a lot of my questions from the standpoint. Hopefully, Joe and Jane Blow, the average citizen, can take some solace that these discussions hopefully are bringing the state a little closer together. And if you can keep those guys away from the Capitol.
Well, and I think you need to circle back to your old friends up in New Jersey and let them know we have more early voting than they have in New York, New Jersey, and Delaware. And so it's never been easier to vote in Georgia, but we have the appropriate guardrails to stop people from cheating.
No, and I appreciate that. This certainly has helped me out a lot, through my process, and I appreciate your time. You're an extremely busy man, so thank you very much for spending this
pleasure.
45 minutes with me.
Hey.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.